Alright, so I have a lot to say about roleplaying. I've done a lot of it, and I've done it at a degree and in such a fashion that most people never will. Even if they play in a game of D&D weekly, they're not going to get quite the level of on the spur of the moment, always on, that I've had role-playing in MMORPGs in a drop-in, drop-out format. We ran a tavern in Ultima Online for 2 years, and basically, anytime somebody dropped in, brand new character, knew nothing about them, they knew nothing about us, we would just spark up some roleplay, and sometimes it was tavern roleplay, sometimes we'd get out into a dungeon. There was always something going on, someone always pushing the story forward, in a way that you just don't get in tabletop role-playing games. It's the same skill set, just dialed up to 11, because you have to go with whatever's happening, and you have game mechanics that you have to work in, and somebody's connection drops, somebody goes AFK, and you just play around it. The game keeps going all the time until you log out. And let me tell you, I didn't log out that much. So I do have a somewhat unique perspective on role-playing in general. I've spent the last week or so on Reddit, reading a ton of threads from people that are just starting out in Dungeons & Dragons, and they don't know how to start. They're getting some bad advice on how the game works, and they have some bad models from popular media about how the game should work, what they should be doing. So in this series of Role-Playing 101 videos, I'm just going to go over various topics for role-playing in general, not a specific game, that I think is worth exploring. Many people are already offended. Many people will disagree with my specific arguments and my specific takes on things, and there are things that I'm just wrong about. I feel like I can help these new players at least get their feet on the ground and figure out how to start. So the very first thing I want to get out of the way is what role-playing is not. Role-playing is not how you say the words, doing funny voices, having a dramatic twist in your backstory. It is a retrospective process, where you feel what your character felt in a moment that has already passed. That is confusing to many people because it's a lot of words. But what you do is you have a character, you know things about them, you make decisions in the spur of the moment, and then you look back emotionally and you feel what they felt that drove them to make that decision. Because you don't have time to sit there and think, well, what would my character do based on all these facts and figures? No, you do what you feel is right based on the totality of circumstances. And sometimes that ends up being out of character, but that's actually in character. Because you, as a human, I'm sure, have acted out of character due to great stimulus, motivations, things that came along that you had to face up with your beliefs and be like, well, actually, I'm not going to do that. Or actually, I am going to do that even though I thought I never would. And it's the same way for role-playing characters. They take on a life of their own, and they do things that we don't expect. Being surprised by your own character is the fun part of role-playing. Doing the voices, acting, getting the applause is great, but the whole point of role-playing is exploring that emotional depth of characters. And it happens in a retroactive way, so you can't push the story forward with role-playing. You can only experience it in the past. So how do you translate that into something you can actually do at the table? Well, it's really more about things that you don't do. Firstly, don't write a huge backstory. The process of writing uses this same aspect where you're emotionally discovering the character, but if you're not doing that at the table during the game, you're not role-playing, you're just writing. If you write too much of your character, if you decide where they're going to go before you get there, you don't get to roleplay. You will not be surprised by what you discover they will do in this scenario based on the circumstances. You've already decided. You're a writer, not a role player. Very often, people think about their characters in isolation. They say, I made this character, and this is what they're like, and this is what they do. And that's fine, but the really interesting part of role-playing is that you don't do it alone. You do it with 3, 4, 5, or sometimes 20 other people. And everything that you think you feel about your character, that your character feels, is being poked and prodded and bouncing off other people doing the same thing. And that interaction that you don't expect, that you don't plan, when you get asked a question by your party member, when you ask them a question that you're legitimately interested in the answer for, that is where a lot of that surprise happens. So you can spur this on. As a role player, you have the skill, the ability to set your party members up for moments of discovery of their own. And you get to discover that about their character too. That's the beauty of these role-playing games, is discovering not just our character, but everybody's character together and creating the situations that let us do that. So let's say you come to a fork in the path with your party. The novice role player, the writer, is going to be like, okay, well, my guy thinks we should go left. And that's it. That is the end of their thought. But I don't believe that's the way to go. It's much more interesting for you and everyone else at the table if you set someone up to make that decision if you don't have a strong opinion about it. If you say, hey, let's ask the ranger. He knows this sort of thing. Now he has a moment that he wasn't expecting where he has to lead the party. And that is maybe something he prepared for, maybe it's something he didn't prepare for, but he's going to discover something about his character in that moment. And you, not the DM, gave him that opportunity. This is what a good party does. This is what a good role player does, is they set up all the people around them to have these moments. And the game really does take on a life of its own when everyone's just setting each other up for cool moments. And it's not just the dungeon master trying to make your character shine or give you challenges that are appropriate to your skill sets, but when you become a party of characters instead of just a team of stat sheets. In this way, it is absolutely critical that you care more about the totality of the story than your story. Your story doesn't exist. Your character is one of 4 on this team and in this story, and all the other characters, the entire world, all of it is the story. And the story is what we're going to look back on and be like, holy shit, that was rad. Or, hey, I really felt what my character would feel there because I let the world just seep in. I just let it be, and I discovered it along with everyone else. So in role-playing, there's no winning or losing. The only thing we can do is push the story forward or keep it from going forward. And the more you push the story forward, the more little moments that you create with other players, the more things we have to look back on and feel our way through. So anytime you feel like, oh, I'm going to die in this battle, I'm going to lose, you're not going to lose. Something's going to happen, and it's going to fill out the puzzle of the story of your character. It's going to make them more complete, more real, and a better memory. So, if all we're doing is this role-playing, why do we have rules with it? So when I think about games, I think about an objective and some kind of limitation to meeting that objective. Golf, for example, you put the ball in the hole. That's not interesting. The obstacle of having to use the clubs is what makes the game. Tabletop role-playing games are different in that they don't have an objective. The objective is just to push the story forward. And so the rules are a framework that allow us to do that. They allow us to resolve conflicts in what would otherwise just be storytelling, right? So if I want to jump over the crevasse, figuring out whether or not I can, the rules let me do that, and they lend credibility when I succeed or fail. It's important to be able to fail, because otherwise the victories have no value. If a player dies in combat, and we fudge the rolls because we're going to be sad for half an hour, that's not good. That takes credibility away from the game. Without the credibility of the rules, the entire fiction crumbles. It becomes hand-wavy and is just whatever we think. There's no weight to any actions. It is absolutely critical that we maintain that credibility when and where we can. So, for new players, people playing their first game, my advice to you is to not look at your character sheet first. Think about the cool thing you want to do in the game, and then you and your DM together translate that into game terms. Always put the story at the forefront of everything that we're doing, because it is the whole point. To not write a 10-page backstory with a dramatic twist somewhere in the middle. I suggest you figure out a cool hometown, the name of it, kind of place it is. You figure out why you left that place. This is one of the hardest problems for people to solve, is motivation to go adventuring. And if you solve that up front, you'll be great. The last thing I would do is put a goal out in the world somewhere. It is easiest to be like, I want to find this person or find this object. But it could be anything. You could be trying to write your epic for the Bardic College. You could be trying to research dangerous monsters. But you should have something that draws you out into the world that you don't know how to solve yet. And the reason for this is that it helps you stay with the party, and it motivates you to take actions that your DM doesn't expect. So you know that you are hunting for rare spiders. When you go down to the temple, you're not going to say, do I see any rare spiders here? You are going to ask orbital questions that are related to that, but are not that. So you're going to investigate webs, right? Webs are now super interesting to you through the lens of that goal. You're going to collect venom from spiders, and you're going to have poisons, and it's going to really bring you into the world. All you have to do to get that is have a goal. Everything else you decide in the moment, and it becomes canon. It becomes part of your character as you play. When you pre-write all of that into your backstory, you just skip all the fun parts. And now you're just doing execution. You're just acting at a table, which is fine. It's just a different thing than what we're doing. We are role-playing. The whole point is discovery. And if you've already discovered everything, you have nowhere to go.